Hello, today I'm joined by Gunnar Andersson. Gunnar is founder and podcast host at Decoding Superhuman. Hello Gunnar, we are happy to have you as a speaker at our Biohacking Congress, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in London on February 20th. Now, please tell us about your background. I know that you gave up your successful career in banking to get into biohacking. How did it happen and why?
Thank you for putting together this amazing event. I'm really looking forward to 2220 is the way I remember it, right? It's the 20th of February, 2020. I'm sure you guys picked that date for a reason. But let's go back to your question. I was an investment banker for many years, almost a decade. And perhaps it's worth fast forward, rewinding, if you will, before that to just give you a little bit of kind of a journey through life. I've been obsessed with this idea of performance and health from a very young age, mainly using health as a tool for performance. The reason being is that I was fortunate enough to have parents that one was in finance on the operations side of things. The other one was a yoga teacher. And so very much had that East meets West philosophy at home. And, you know, I saw from a very young age that there was a correlation between my health, my well-being, and my performance, particularly in the workspace. And so fast forward now to my investment banking career. I worked both in New York and Singapore, eventually becoming pretty successful at helping companies and governments raise money in the South Asia region. Part of my job was to travel all around the world. I got to go to 40 countries in 4 years. I helped companies and governments, people like the government of Indonesia, for instance, raise a lot of money. And during that time, I thought I was healthy. I thought I was this ideal definition of what society proclaimed was health, right? And so I was doing all of these things. I was throwing the butter in the coffee. I was doing CrossFit too many times per week. I was doing all of these things. And so when it came time to, resign from investment banking, I was really pursuing a life as an entrepreneur. I had an idea that I wanted to build, but during that time period, I found out that I had a heart condition. And due to that heart condition, I got even more and more into this field of biohacking because I was in quantified self from the very early days, but I got into biohacking really in an effort to fix myself.
Gunnar Andersson is founder of Decoding Superhuman and his mission to elevate the human experience. Gunnar, could you please tell us about your clients' results? Does anybody crack the superhuman code?
So Decoding Superhuman really has two elements. There's the public-facing side, which is the podcast, and that's a top 100 iTunes podcast in business and careers, and 4 to 6 countries depending on the week, right? Then there's the private side, where I work one-to-one with people in the practice of health optimization. And so you asked what were the types of results that we get for people and what are they able to do? Well, I work very specifically with a certain type of crowd. These are entrepreneurs, these are CEOs, these are executives, these are people that I call change makers. And so what do? I help them elevate or achieve and sustain high performance states. We do that through the practice of health optimization. And so just to give you a case study here, I have a client who will go unnamed because I didn't ask him before the show to release his name, but let's speak candidly about him. Before working with me, he had a pretty big scare in the form of a panic attack. He'd never experienced this before. And the genesis of that panic attack was really his company was going through a period whereby they're going through a funding squeeze. And as a startup founder, and I know we have a lot going on with the startups at Biohacking Congress, right? As a startup founder, you go through a lot, and sometimes that could be a pinch in the bank account. And this particular founder had a pinch in his bank account, and it was in the form of, a cash shortage. He didn't know what to do, and that eventually manifested itself, and that stress manifested itself in the form of a panic attack. So this gentleman and I started speaking, we started working together. And what I do with all of my clients is we initially sit down, we gather a whole ton of data on somebody, and then we lay out objectives, strategies, and tactics. So first, let me go through the data. what we're doing is we're laying out lab results or we're getting lab results for people. I like to look at the metabolome, but also sometimes genetics. Now, think about it this way. Genetics is the blueprint of where you should be. Metabolome is really telling us where your cells are right now and where they have been very recently. And so once we have that information, and that could come in blood, urine, and stool, we're able to paint a picture of exactly the nutrients that you need for this process that is called health optimization. And so then we lay out our objectives, our strategies, and our tactics. And so our objectives here are really, okay, how do we eliminate that incidence of panic attacks? So how do we build stress resilience? How do we achieve and sustain higher levels of energy? Because you're a startup founder. And if you're a startup founder, you need to be boisterous every single day, right? And then how do we really physically make sure that that is supporting the mission, the goal that he has with his company? And the strategy, what's the strategy? Well, one of the things that, going back to my own story, that I got wrong was I started looking at the human as sort of diet and exercise are the only two components of health. Well, we know that that's factually incorrect. And this is easily demonstrated by any time if you get a really bad night's sleep, you're going to start craving things like sugar, right? And so we know that humans are, in fact, complex adaptive systems. And so if a human is a complex adaptive system, we need to upgrade the whole network, if you will, and balance that network. And so what we do by taking all that data is now we're upgrading and balancing that network through the use of supplements, lifestyle changes, and so many other different things. And then those tactics are those day-to-day things that you're doing. Maybe it's getting more sunlight. Maybe it's breathing differently. Maybe it's meditation. And so in the case of this startup founder, what we did was we first started layering in, wow, I can't speak English today, started layering in things like breathing tactics and just helping them breathe normally, because most people breathe into their chest, but that's a sympathetic activator. And so we wanted to get him breathing into his belly. Started training that a little bit. We started layering in supplements that a stressful executive may need. And then we coupled that all by creating feedback loops through a device like the Oura Ring, like a Garmin wearable, whereby we're able to see on a day-to-day basis how that person's doing. And that serves as really a measurement and a benchmark for health optimization. What is unique about how I work with people is I recognize that. I don't treat any two people the same. I don't actually treat. What I do is I balance networks. But what we do is we look at each individual and say, in the context of their life, and we then plot that plan for them. So let's talk first about what you mentioned in terms of gathering data. I like to gather data in the form of lab results initially up front. And then depending on that person, it may be every 3 to 6 months, or if they're really, really optimized, maybe just once a year. And so what we do is we gather those labs every 3 to 6 months. We run a series of tests. And then we also meet in between to discuss what's going well. What are the things that we need to focus on every 2 weeks to every month? Now, that depends on the individual. Now, and let me explain a little bit more. There are certain people that maybe there's something going on in their life and as a result need more attention. We speak to them every single week. Now, there are other people that may need a little bit less, more of a check-in, in which case we'll speak to them once a month. And so that frequency, if you will, is really determined by the individual and where they are on this health optimization continuum. I have a number of different projects going on right now, all of which are, so if I look at how to affect change in the world, which is what I want to do, I want to elevate the human experience through health. And if I look at the projects that I am involved in, all of them have that sole purpose, because I work with teams, and the team is only a certain amount of people. There's over 7 billion people in this world. And so the best way that I know to help the rest of the world is to help people elevate their health. And as a result of being at a higher status in health, they're able to go out there and affect change in the world in a different way.
At our Biohacking Congress in London on February 20th, Gunnar Anderson will give the keynote speech, The Future of Work, Preparing Humanity Through Performance Optimization. Gunnar, in the description of your keynote speech, I like your statement, it is not time to give up on humanity. What about is your talk going to be?
You have a lot of really good people in the room, and so I wanted to give a unique perspective, and that was one looking at work, particularly the future of work. And so the future of work, you hear a lot of discussion around artificial intelligence, blockchain, and all of these very good buzzwords, but nobody's really talking about the human. And I think what's interesting about this is that I think for my opinion is that for a while, we've left a lot on the table when it comes to humanity, and particularly in regards to our health. Our current relationship with healthcare is really not healthcare. In fact, if you go and visit any sort of medical system, you're going to look at a disease, and they're certainly very good at disease management and treating disease. But who do you go to for health? Who do you go to optimize your health, or maybe just even get this maintenance level? Well, that framework needs to exist. And what I want to propose in London is that there's a framework through benchmarking yourself whereby you can optimize your health for future and better performance.
Boomer, as far as I understand, with Decoding Superhuman clients, firstly you speak about their goals and then discover what is possible and recommended for each individual. However, could you please give to Biohacking Congress followers some of the best practice tips on how they can get started in biohacking?
This is a great way to get started in biohacking in general, right? Is gathering information from people out there who have already done what you're trying to do. That's certainly a great way to start. But let's go back to that framework that I outlined earlier. And by the way, that framework of objective strategies and tactics, I'm pretty sure I borrowed it from somebody. So to whoever said it originally, thank you. But laying out a framework of what are your objectives when it comes to biohacking. Are you looking to sleep better? Are you looking to have more energy? Are you looking to eat better? Those kind of things. Laying out those objectives first, just trying to understand what your goals are. And once you have a goal, one of the key things that I like to emphasize to people is measurement and getting very, very specific about measurement, because measurement and doing it diligently has changed my life and has changed every one of my clients' lives. And what we do is we define what we need to measure in the context of your goals. So objective strategies, tactics, yes, but we also add a layer of measurement. And so the first thing that I would do after you define your goals is define what you're going to measure. Now, there's a lot in the biohacking community and a lot of misconception in the biohacking community that all of this stuff has to cost a ton of money. But in reality, some of the best biohacks cost little to nothing at all. Going out in nature, the Japanese have known about it for years, right? The Finns, of course, have done very, very well in that regard. Done very well in many regards, actually. Going out and getting sunlight. These are all cost-free, in most cases, biohacks. Now, if you live up in the northern Scandinavian countries this time of year, maybe you need to fly to get sunlight, but that is something that you can do that is certainly free. And then again, just going back to that monitoring and measuring, that is so, so important, because how are you going to know when you've reached that goal unless you're measuring? I like to make this objective as much as possible. And so defining those variables has been very helpful for me, and I'm sure it'll be very helpful for anyone listening. Now, the other thing is acquiring knowledge. And when you're acquiring knowledge, there are many different ways to do this. You can go out and really understand the science behind everything that I know all the thought leaders are speaking about. You can read a lot of books. Those are very important, and you should get a basis in science, especially. But also you can attend these conferences. So we're here talking about the Biohacking Congress, right? And the Biohacking Congress is on February 20th, 2020, and it's in a great city like London. So join us there, and you're able to really just see firsthand what people who've already gone down this path and are willing to discuss what they did right and what they did wrong are doing now. And you're able to acquire a lot of information in a very short period of time from some of the leading thought leaders, that's a great sentence, from some of the thought leaders around the world. And so I just really encourage people to get more involved in the community. And one of the ways to do that is to certainly come to this Congress.
Thank you, Gunnar. Looking forward to meet you. Friends, join us at Biohacking Congress in London on February 20th. You can get your ticket with discount by link under this video.